Welcome to Somnotali's History, where we turn the slow pages of the past into gentle stories to help you unwind, drift off, and rest. If you're listening with heavy eyes or a tired mind, you're in the right place. Tonight, let's imagine something a little different, not a tale of kings or battles, but something quieter. What if you were born in the Dark Ages, not as a lord or a warrior, but as an ordinary soul, waking to frost-covered mornings, soft wool blankets, and the quiet rhythm of a world without machines. A world where days moved slowly, and nights stretched long beneath stars that had no names, yet no drama, no danger, just the small, forgotten details of a distant time. The smell of bread from an open hearth, the creak of a wooden door, the warmth of hands that pass knowledge without words. So pull your blanket close, let your breath slow, and join me as we gently step back into a world long gone, but never truly forgotten. Popular culture paints the Dark Ages as a void, a collapsed world where learning vanished and people wandered in ignorance. But as the firelight of Rome faded, something quiet, older, and more human took its place. That's where you are now, and that's where your story begins. You're waking up, not in your room, in your time, but in a different place entirely. One where memory foam doesn't exist, and the first breath you take carries the scent of smoke and damp straw. You feel it before you see it, the coldness of the morning air. It seeps through the walls, slides beneath the heavy wool blanket that covers your body, and kisses your skin like winter never left. You breathe slowly. Your breath forms pale clouds in the dimness. It's cold, but not unbearable. It's the kind of cold that makes you want to stay under the covers just a little longer. The light in the room is faint, not the harsh glow of a bulb, but a gray, tired morning filtering through uneven wooden shutters. The slats don't seal completely. Gaps in the wood let in ribbons of silver light and the occasional whisper of wind. There are no curtains, no glass, just the sound of outside birds cawing, wind brushing through thatched rooftops, a distant dog barking without hurry. The silence between those sounds is deep and wide, like the whole world is still half asleep. You lie still on a straw-filled mattress. It's lumpy in places, and though it's familiar now, your back remembers the ache of getting used to it. A linen sheet is beneath you, coarse and scratchy against your skin. The blanket is wool-heavy, uneven, with patches that itch and others that comfort. It smells faintly of sheep and smoke. It's been mended more than once, lovingly repaired by someone who doesn't waste a thread. You shift gently, careful not to wake the others. You're not alone. Your younger siblings are still asleep beside you. You hear their slow breaths. One of them murmurs in a dream. The warmth of your shared bodies under the same blanket is the only thing that made the night bearable. The fire in the central hearth died sometime before dawn, and no one's gotten up yet to stir it back to life. Your home is one large room, walls made of wattle and daub, the roof above sloping and thatched. There's a hole in the center, just above the hearth, where the smoke escapes. Last night's fire left behind blackened embers and faint traces of warmth. The hearth is surrounded by stones, some dark with soot, others with carvings barely visible in the flickering light. You remember watching your father carve them years ago, little symbols, perhaps holy, perhaps just hopeful. You rise slowly, gently lifting the blanket and placing your feet on the hard-packed earthen floor. It's cool, even in your woolen socks. The silence still holds. The house breathes with you. You cross the room, careful not to trip over the low stool near the hearth or the basket of dried herbs that always seems to be in the way. You crouch beside the hearth, lifting the fire, covering a round piece of old iron that keeps embers from floating free in the night. Underneath, there's still a faint red glow. You breathe gently into it, shielding the warmth with your hands. You feed it dry kindling, thin strips of bark, A curled feather of straw. You breathe again, slow and patient. Smoke curls upward, then a small flicker of flame. Fire means life. Fire means breakfast. Fire means light. And soon, the house feels just a little less cold. Your mother stirs behind you. She murmurs something soft, a prayer, perhaps, and sits up, her hair braided from the night before, her eyes not yet fully open. She nods to you, says your name. You nod back, and without words, the day begins. She sets to making a kind of porridge from the grain left in the clay pot by the wall. It's coarse, with bits of last year's oats and crushed roots. She adds a pinch of salt, if she has any, not always, and stirs it in an old iron pot over the flame you just revived. The smell is earthy, bland, but comforting. Your siblings wake slowly. They rub their eyes and groan softly. One of them kicks you and laughs. You tickle him, and your mother hushes you both. Soon, your father enters, not from another room, but from outside. He's been up before sunrise, checking the traps near the edge of the woods. His boots are muddy, and he carries a few small rabbits, already gutted. He hands them to your mother with a tired smile. He smells of wet leaves and smoke. Breakfast is quiet. No table, just knees and wooden bowls. The warmth of the fire, the heaviness of the porridge, the closeness of your family. It's not luxury, but it is enough. There is no sugar, no spice, just what the land gives, and what your hands make of it. After breakfast, you wrap a thick woolen cloak over your shoulders and step outside. The door is wooden, heavy, and doesn't quite fit the frame, so it groans when you push it. Outside, the world is awake. The mist hangs low over the fields. Chickens peck at the dirt, their feathers ruffled from the cold. A neighbor passes, pulling a small wooden cart filled with chopped firewood. He nods to you without a word. Everyone knows each other. Everyone sees everything. You walk to the edge of the fields, past the goat pen, past the worn stone where people grind grain. You feel the mud pull at your shoes, smell the earth, hear the birds. It's quiet in a way your world never is anymore. No hum of machines, no distant engines, just the sound of life and weather. You are in Britain, for 10 AD. Rome has left, gone back across the sea. The soldiers are gone. The coins with the emperor's face are still around, but fewer now. Some people still pray in Latin, others don't pray at all. There are stories of war in the south, whispers of invaders from across the water. But here, today, it is calm. The village is small, perhaps 20 families. You know every one of them: the baker with the crooked back, the old woman who swears she can talk to animals, the boy who once fell from the roof and never quite spoke the same after. Life here is made of small details. Who has flour? Who has wool? Who is pregnant? Who has a cough? News spreads fast. Even when people speak slowly. By mid-morning, you're already working. Today, it's gathering reeds near the river. They'll be dried for roofing, for baskets, for kindling. Your hands are red with cold, but you barely notice anymore. You tie them in bundles, stacking them neatly, always thinking of the next task. The river is slow-moving and brown. It smells clean, but you never drink it without boiling it first. You know better. You've seen what happens when people forget. Water is life, but it can also bring death. As you work, you think of stories, the ones your grandfather used to tell by the fire, of the old gods, of giants in the hills, of Roman roads buried beneath the earth. You wonder if those roads are still there. Sometimes, when the fog lifts just right, you swear you can see a line of stones stretching into the distance, straight as an arrow. The rest of the day passes in rhythms: work, rest, food, fire. Everything has its time. Everything is earned. You repair a hole in the roof. You help your father split logs. You listen to your mother sing as she weaves. Your siblings chase each other round the goats. The sun arcs slowly above, then begins to fall. By evening, the hearth is roaring again. The inside of your home glows with flickering orange light. Shadows dance on the walls. Dinner is the rest of the porridge, thickened with herbs. A few pieces of meat from the morning rabbits, carefully portioned. Warmth fills your belly. The night comes early in this world. And so, after the fire is tended, and your little brother has been pulled from the corner where he fell asleep upright, you all lie back down on the straw mattress beneath the heavy blanket. You feel the weight of the day in your arms, in your legs, in your breath. You stare up at the dark wooden beams of the ceiling. The smoke from the fire curls upward and disappears into the vent. The wind outside rustles the shutters, but you're warm now. You're tired. You're safe. And as your eyes begin to close, you wonder what tomorrow will bring in this strange, quiet world, this world without Rome, without clocks, without noise, just earth and fire and the steady rhythm of a life you never imagined. Sleep comes easily here. Morning again. You wake slowly, the way you do most days here, not with the blare of an alarm or the jolt of a phone screen, but with the quiet shift of light in the room, the whisper of wind outside, and the familiar ache in your shoulders from a night spent on straw. The coarseness of the linen sheet scratches lightly against your skin as you stretch beneath the blanket. The fire in the hearth has burned down again, and the room has turned cool and still, the kind of cold that makes you pull the blanket up over your nose for just one more minute. But already, the household has begun to stir. Your younger sister is sitting up, rubbing her eyes, hair tangled from sleep. You hear the soft creak of the wooden bench near the hearth, the clink of a clay pot as your mother moves it aside. Outside, someone walks past, their boots squishing in damp soil, and a dog lets out a low, lazy bark in response. The village is waking, one breath at a time. You rise slowly, push back the blanket, and put your feet on the packed earth floor. Your toes curl a little at the touch, still cold from the night. You pull on your tunic, worn and woolen, dyed in a color that once may have been brown, but now resembles the earth itself. There are patches along the sleeves and a tear near the hem that someone tried to mend long ago. But it fits, and it's warm. That's enough. Breakfast is quiet again. Just porridge and a few hard crusts of bread from yesterday, softened with warm water, a pinch of salt. Nothing fancy, but it fills the hollow of your belly. You eat seated on a wooden stool, watching the fire regain its strength, flames licking the pot. Your mother stirs. The smell of smoke and boiled grain fills the room like a memory. Afterward, you step outside with your father. The door sticks a little, and he grunts as he pushes it open with his shoulder. The early morning mist clings low over the fields, curling between the homes like slow breath. The sun is hidden behind a low bank of clouds, the kind that promise more dampness than warmth. Your village, if it can even be called that, is small, no more than 20 homes, all built the same way, wooden frames, daub walls, thatched roofs, smoke curling from holes in the top like long, sleepy sighs. There's no stone here, no marble arches, no columns. Those things belong to another time, a Roman time. Some still speak of those days, when roads stretched forever and hot water came from the walls. But to you, it sounds like a story. The only stone building near your village is the crumbling remains of a Roman outpost, a half-buried ruin now covered in moss and vines, its purpose long forgotten. Children play near it sometimes, daring each other to touch the old bricks, claiming they're cursed or magical, or both. Your father walks with you to the edge of the field. It's planting season. The earth is thick with last night's rain, and your boots sink a little with each step. You feel the pull of the mud, the weight of your tasks ahead. There are no machines here, just hands, just tools carved from wood and iron. The seeds are kept in a woven basket beside the path. Barley today, with hopes for rye later. Each handful you scatter is a prayer in disguise. Will it grow? Will the rain come at the right time? Will the birds leave anything behind? Your father doesn't speak much as he works. He scatters seed with practiced movements, the arc of his arm rhythmic and sure. You try to match him, though your fingers aren't as quick, and the wind catches some of your grain, tossing it in directions you didn't mean. He doesn't correct you. He just glances sideways and offers a faint smile, the kind you remember long after words fade. At midday, you take a break. You sit under a tree near the edge of the field, sharing a chunk of bread and a bit of hard cheese with your father. He passes you a wooden cup filled with cool water from the nearby stream. You drink deeply. The water tastes of earth and roots, but it's refreshing. A pair of crows hop nearby, their dark eyes watching you with quiet curiosity. You toss them a crumb, and they squabble over it, wings flapping and feathers catching the sun. After lunch, your father sends you to the village square to fetch more seed. It's not a square, not really, just an open patch of trampled dirt where paths meet and people gather. There's a low wooden cross near the center, its arms weathered by wind and rain. Someone once tied a bundle of herbs to it, maybe for blessing, maybe for protection. No one talks much about why. On the way there, you pass others. An old man sharpening a tool, a woman washing clothes by the stream, slapping them against a rock and humming a tune you half recognize. Children playing with sticks, pretending they're swords. A boy runs past you, barefoot, covered in mud and laughter. A dog chases him, barking in delight. Life here is simple, and the stories that grow from it are small but sturdy. You reach the village granary, little more than a large wooden shed raised slightly above the ground on stone supports to keep the rats out. Inside, sacks of grain are stacked in careful rows. A young man sits nearby, counting with his fingers as he ties bits of twine around the mouths of each sack. He knows you, nods, passes you a half-filled bag without needing to ask who sent you. The way back, you pass by the oldest woman in the village. She sits beneath a tree near her home, wrapped in layers of wool, her hands forever busy with some sort of weaving. Her fingers never stop. She's said to be over 60, an ancient age in your world. Some say she remembers the Romans. Others say she's part Druid. No one says it too loudly. She hums as you pass, her voice thin as a reed in the wind. Later that day, you help your mother in the home. She shows you how to grind herbs with the stone, how to stitch a tear in a tunic, how to fold a blanket so the edges stay clean longer. She tells you which plants are safe, and which ones will make your stomach twist for days. You nod and listen, and ask small questions. Her answers are soft, patient, colored by years of doing the same things over and over. By evening, the entire village feels slower. The work is done, or mostly done. A few still tend the firewood or sweep the mud from their doorways, but most have returned inside. The light shifts again, not the harsh drop of a modern sunset, but a slow cooling of color, a deepening of shadows. The air carries the scent of smoke and stew and damp earth. You can hear a lullaby from one house, the low whistle of someone whittling wood in another. Dinner is quiet. You sit cross-legged on the floor, bowl in hand. Root vegetables boiled in broth, a scrap of meat, a piece of bread with the end slightly burned. It is not fancy, but it is warm, and you are grateful. After the meal, you sit by the fire. Your mother tells a story not from a book, but from memory, about a man who lived in the woods and could speak to wolves. Your siblings lean in closer as wide. Your father chuckles now and then, shaking his head like he's heard it all before. But he listens too. Outside, the world grows darker. The shutters are closed. The wind picks up. A distant owl calls. You lie back down on the straw mattress, the same one from last night, the same one from many nights before. You pull the blanket up over your shoulders and feel the familiar weight settle in. Before sleep, you think about the world beyond your village, about the people across the hills, the stories of the Romans, the distant lands beyond the sea. You wonder what's true and what's just smoke and shadow. You wonder what tomorrow will bring. And as the fire dies down and the night wraps around your home like a second blanket, you feel yourself sinking not in fear, not in discomfort, but in quiet, in the rhythm of a life both forgotten and deeply remembered, in a world not lost, just resting. The days begin to stretch a little longer now. The cold is still in the air, clinging to the shadows and the stone, but the light stays just a little longer with each passing evening. You notice it slowly. You notice most things in this world not from calendars or clocks, but by the rhythm of your bones, the shift of the wind, and the quiet murmur of birds returning to the trees. You wake again beneath that heavy wool blanket, the scent of smoke and dust still lingering in the folds. Your breath doesn't form quite the same white clouds anymore, and that, more than anything, tells you the season is beginning to change. Spring is stirring not loudly, but cautiously, like a child opening its eyes after a long sleep. The fire is already lit this morning. Someone must have woken before you, your mother, probably. You can hear her moving around the hearth, stoking the flames, adding water to the pot, stirring quietly. Your siblings are still asleep, their soft breaths rising and falling under the blanket beside you. You listen for a moment, just lying still. The creak of wood, the gentle crackle of fire, the distant call of a bird outside the shutter. These are the sounds you know best now. Sounds of a world that never hurries, even when the work never ends. You rise, as always, slowly, carefully. Your feet touch the cold floor and find your boots waiting near the door. You dress quickly. Tunic, belt, cloak. Each item is familiar, worn, and patched. But in this world, everything is. Nothing goes to waste. Even scraps have stories. You tie your cloak and stretch your arms, feeling the weight of another day settling on your shoulders. Outside, the ground is soft and dark from yesterday's rain. The sky is a soft gray, but there's no storm in it, just the quiet promise of moisture and growth. Your father is already by the field. You can see his silhouette bent, steady, familiar, moving, with the same patient rhythm you've watched your whole life. You join him without words. Words aren't always needed here. There's comfort in silence, in shared tasks, in the way two people can work side by side without needing to fill the air. He hands you a bundle of wooden stakes and a length of rope. Today, you're marking the furrows. The land isn't flat. It rolls gently, dips where the stream has carved its way through the soil, rises where the rocks refuse to move. But it is yours, or at least, it belongs to your family, passed down through memory more than paper. There are no deeds, no titles, just the knowledge that your father farmed it, and his father before him, and now you will too. You drive the stakes into the earth, measuring distance with the rope. Each line you mark will become a row of crops, each furrow a hope for food, each handful of seed a wager with nature. It's all uncertain, but uncertainty is a companion now, a stranger. The soil is cold on your fingers, but not frozen. It breaks apart beneath your hands, rich and dark. You feel the roots still buried from last season, the fragments of plants long harvested. You know this ground. You know where it's soft, where it holds water, where it floods when the spring rains come too fast. Together, you and your father till the first rose. The wooden plow creaks as he pulls it forward, the iron tip biting into the earth with each step. You guide it, steadying the line, clearing stones as they appear. Your hands blister, your arms ache, but these are aches that mean survival. By midday, the sun peeks briefly from behind the clouds. It's a weak light, pale and watery, but it warms your neck as you sit beside the field, chewing slowly on a piece of dried meat and crusty bread. Your mother packed it in a cloth for you, with a few slices of dried apple from last year's store. You eat slowly, savoring the sweetness of the fruit, remembering how rare it is now. You offer a slice to your father. He takes it with a small nod. The village looks different from this angle. You see the smoke rising gently from the roofs, the chickens pecking near the path, the curve of the hill beyond where the trees begin. You wonder what lies farther beyond the hill, beyond the forest, beyond the world you know. You've heard stories, of course. Traders who passed through seasons ago, a monk who once stayed in the village and told tales of lands far to the south, where the sun is always warm and the streets are paved in stone. But here, the world is smaller, familiar, soil and sky, fire and frost. After lunch, you return to the fields. You scatter seed from the basket, hand over hand, one steady arc after another. You whisper prayers as you work, not the long Latin ones the priest sometimes says, but the quiet, old ones your grandmother used to hum. Simple things, wishes, really, for rain, for sun, for no birds today. You know the birds are always watching. Crows and starlings perch in the trees, waiting. Their black eyes shimmer in the light. You can't blame them. Everyone's hungry in spring. When the sun begins to lower, you gather your tools, brush the soil from your clothes, and walk home with the ache of honest work in your bones. The village path is lined with prints, boots, hooves, paws. Everyone's been busy. You pass a boy carrying a pail of water, straining under its weight. He nods at you, proud. A girl sits with her grandmother by the doorstep, weaving rushes into a mat. Her fingers move quickly, skill passed down like a story. A tea home. The fire is warm again. Your mother is stirring a pot, the smell of turnips and onions filling the room. Your siblings are playing near the door, using sticks to draw patterns in the dirt. Your father sets down the basket of tools. You sit together in the glow of firelight, hands outstretched, letting the heat soak in. Dinner is quiet. You eat slowly, spoon scraping against the bowl. The warmth fills your stomach, spreads through your chest. It's not much, but it's enough. It's always just enough. Afterward, you help your father sharpen the tools. The sound of stone against iron is rhythmic, almost musical. Sparks dance in the low light. You listen as he hums, an old melody you can't quite place. Your mother braids your sister's hair. Your little brother falls asleep sitting up. The fire pops gently, its flames curling upward like a prayer. Outside, the wind moves softly. The shutters creak. The stars begin to appear. Faint, faraway lights in a vast, dark sky. There are no lanterns here, no glow from distant cities. Just the stars, so many of them. You watch for a while, wrapped in a woolen cloak, feeling small and safe beneath their endless shimmer. When it's time for sleep, you return to your place beside your siblings. The straw bed welcomes you, scratchy and warm. The blanket settles around you like a second skin. Your eyes are heavy, your arms tired, but your mind is quiet. You think of the seeds you planted today, of the soil beneath your nails, of the birds still watching in the trees. You wonder if the rain will come tonight, and as sleep takes you again, you drift not into dreams of castles or kings, but into the quiet satisfaction of living close to the earth, where time moves slowly, and the world speaks in seasons, where life is hard, but it is yours, and it is enough. The warmth doesn't last forever. It never does. Though spring comes and the land begins to soften, the memory of winter never quite fades. It sits like a shadow in the corners of your thoughts, reminding you how quickly the world can grow still. You remember the cold not only in your bones, but in the way people spoke less during those months, in how the smoke curled slower, thicker, how footsteps crunched on frost before dawn, and how every sound felt louder when the land was quiet. You've lived through many winters by now, and each one arrives like a slow breath, not sudden, but certain. It begins with the shortening of days. The light fades earlier each evening. The sun feels tired, barely lifting above the trees before beginning its descent again. You notice the animals change. First, birds grow silent, squirrels grow frantic, the deer appear less often near the edges of the woods, and then, the people begin to change too. Work shifts indoors. The fields sleep. The tools are cleaned and stacked carefully by the wall. The last of the harvest is brought inside turnips, onions, dried herbs, a handful of apples still clinging to ripeness. Grain is counted again and again, measured and remeasured. Every sack matters, every crumb remembered. You wake later in winter, not because you're rested, but because the dark lingers. Morning doesn't arrive with color. It seeps in slowly, a faint light through frost-covered shutters. The fire is always cold in the morning. The hearth becomes the center of life in these months. Everything happens near it. Meals, repairs, stories, sleep. You begin your day crouched beside it, coaxing it back to life with careful breath and bits of dry bark. You learn to listen to the fire when it's hungry, when it's ready, when it's just smoke and no flame. Outside, the world is muffled. The snow, when it comes, is not always heavy, but it changes everything. Footsteps are hushed. Voices seem to float. The trees crack under the cold. The air is sharp, tasting of iron and wood smoke. You walk slower in winter, not just from the weight of your boots or the depth of the snow, but because the cold makes everything deliberate. Every movement costs warmth. Some days, the wind howls through the cracks in the walls. You wrap blankets around your shoulders and stay close to the fire. You rub your hands together, blow on your fingers, and try not to think about how long the season still has left. On other days, it's perfectly still, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring, the kind that makes the world feel asleep. The food grows simpler as winter stretches on. At first, you have stews, thick with root vegetables and bits of salted meat. But over time, the flavors become dull. The bread grows harder. The herbs disappear. Hunger never quite arrives fully, but it sits in the background. Not starvation, but the slow, gnawing kind that makes you dream of summer berries and roasted grains. You chew slower. You scrape every bowl clean. You wait. Sickness comes in winter too. Coughs that don't go away. Fevers that come in the night. A child with burning skin. A grandmother who forgets her own name. You've seen it before. There is no doctor, only what the healer knows. Dried herbs, bitter teas, prayers whispered over steaming cloths. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it doesn't. You learn not to ask too many questions. You learn to wait and hope. The healer in your village is a quiet woman. Her home smells of smoke and mint and damp bark. She wears a necklace of bone and carries pouches filled with dried leaves. Children are afraid of her, but their parents are not. She knows the ways of the old gods and the new. She lights candles on nights when the moon is full. She mixes pastes that sting but heal. You once had a fever, long ago, and she sat beside you through the night, humming a song older than memory. A tea night, the world tightens even further. The cold seeps in despite your best efforts. Blankets layered upon blankets, bodies huddled close. The fire burns low, not from neglect, but from rationing. Wood is precious now. Every log saved is a day survived. This is the time for stories. You sit near the fire, shoulders wrapped in a woolen shawl, watching the flames dance along the blackened stone. Your father speaks softly, his voice low and steady, telling stories he heard from his father. Tales of wolves that walk like men, of spirits in the trees, of ancient stones that remember names. Your siblings lean close. Your mother mends a tear, in your tunic by firelight, her hands never stopping even as she listens. You add your own stories sometimes. Not ones from books, there are no books here, but the stories you invent, or half remember, or heard from the traveling monk who stayed a winter once and left behind only a broken sandal and a dozen strange stories about deserts and stars. You imagine distant lands filled with warmth, where winter never comes and rivers are always full. The stories don't chase away the cold, but they soften it. They give it shape. You begin to look forward to them, the way the fire glows, the flicker of shadows on the walls, the comfort of familiar voices. Some nights, when the wind is quiet and the snow falls softly, you step outside just for a moment, just to breathe. The sky is endless, the stars brighter than you remember. Your breath clouds before you, and your ears sting from the cold. But the silence is beautiful, holy, even. The snow muffles every sound. Your village disappears under a blanket of white, and for a moment, it feels like you are the only one awake in the world. Back inside, you slip beneath the blankets, pressing your feet against your brother's for warmth. The fire crackles quietly. Your mother hums to herself as she braids her hair for sleep. Your father stirs once, then stills. The house breathes with you. You fall asleep to the rhythm of wind against the shutters and the slow heartbeat of the fire. Your dreams are soft, filled with light and warmth and green fields that feel impossibly far away, and even though the winter still holds the land in its quiet grip, you feel something underneath it, something patient, something waiting, a promise that spring always returns. The first time you hear a church bell, it doesn't sound like a song. It sounds like a question, a hollow, distant ringing that rolls down the hills in slow, deliberate pulses. You don't know where it's coming from, not at first, but the sound stays with you. It echoes inside you long after it fades, like something left unanswered. You've grown up in a world shaped more by the earth than the sky. Seasons are your calendar, the sun and moon your timekeepers. You've learned to read the language of frost and blossoms, of river water rising and birds circling. But faith, in your village, has always been something softer, older, whispered, not preached. In your home, there are small carved tokens on the shelf near the fire, simple figures worn smooth by years of hands. Your grandmother said they protect the hearth, but never explained how. There's a small bundle of dried herbs hanging near the door, tied with red thread. For blessings, your mother once said, but also for mice. Even she wasn't sure anymore. When someone falls ill, the healer is summoned, not the priest. When a child is born, their name is spoken in a hush, their forehead touched with water from the stream, not holy water from a font. These are the ways that have always been. Quiet rituals, familiar gestures, no altar, no book, no cathedral. But now, that bell again. You hear it once more, a week later. This time, clearer, closer, a single, ringing note carried on the wind. Your father says there's a man building something near the edge of the old Roman road. Not a home, not a stable, something different, a place of prayer. The villagers are cautious, curious, but quiet. Some go to look, standing at a distance beneath the trees. You go with them one morning. The path is muddy. Your boots sink into it as you walk, and birds flit low between the branches. The sound of hammers rings out now, not the sharp clang of iron, but the dull thud of wood on stone. What you find is strange. A building, small and square, made from timber and stone. Not elegant, not grand, but different. A wooden cross stands above the doorway. The man working there wears simple robes and sings to himself in a language you half understand. Latin, maybe, or something like it. His voice is steady, kind. He speaks to the villagers slowly, carefully. He calls himself Brother Eamon, says he's come from a monastery to the south, days away by foot, sent to help bring light to forgotten places. He speaks of Christ, of a God who walks among men, of a kingdom not built on land, but in the heart. Some people scoff, others listen, most remain still. You find yourself returning once or twice, not out of belief, but out of curiosity. The chapel, as he calls it, begins to take shape. A bell is hung on a crooked beam above the entrance. The inside smells of cut wood, smoke, and something faintly sweet beeswax, perhaps. There are no pews, just a floor of packed earth, and a simple table, covered with a cloth. A book rests upon it. The page is thick, the letters shaped by hand. You've never seen a book like it. Your fingers ache to touch it, but you don't. Brother Eamon notices your interest and shows you another, smaller page, not from the book, but from a bundle he keeps wrapped in cloth. He points at the letters, tells you their names, traces the curves with his finger. His voice is calm, slow, patient. You don't understand most of what he says, but his presence is peaceful, like a warm fire in winter. You begin to think about the gods you were raised with, the ones of tree and river, the ones without names. Are they angry, or do they understand that the world changes? One evening, back in the village, your mother lights a candle and places it near the window. She doesn't say why. You don't ask. That same night, your father brings in wood from the cold and stops for a moment near the door. He touches the carved figure above the frame, not out of habit, but reverence. The lines of his face are thoughtful, as if he's remembering something he never quite learned. The seasons continue. The days grow longer again. The fields begin to stir with green, but something else stirs too in the village, in the minds of those around you. A quiet shift, not a rejection of the old ways, but an opening. A few children are brought to Brother Eamon. He dips their heads in water, says a prayer over them. One girl, small and shy, cries during the blessing. Her mother laughs gently and holds her closer. Afterward, the villagers watch from a distance, not with scorn, but with wonder. You find yourself walking the old Roman road more often now, not for faith, but for peace. There's something about the chapel, its simplicity, the soft scratch of the wind against its roof, the way the bell sounds at sunset, not to summon, but to settle inside. There's always a candle burning, a small one, placed on the corner of the wooden table. The flame flickers gently, casting light that dances on the walls. Brother Eamon says it's a symbol of hope, of warmth, of the soul. You just think it looks beautiful. One day, you help him carry wood for the chapel's roof. He thanks you with a smile and a hunk of bread baked by someone from a neighboring village. He tells you a story not from memory, but from the book. He reads slowly, carefully. It's a tale of kindness, of mercy, of a man who washed the feet of strangers. Later, you walk home beneath a sky streaked with clouds, the sun setting low beyond the hills. You think about the old gods. You think about the new. You think about how both seem to ask for the same thing, that you live gently, that you care for others, that you remember the rhythm of the seasons, and the firelight, and the stories told in quiet rooms. At night, you sleep near the hearth again. The fire burns low. The shadows on the wall sway with each flicker. You hear your father's breath, deep and even. Your siblings curled beside you. The wind brushes the shutters softly, like a lullaby. You wonder, as your eyes begin to close, if the gods old or new are listening, if they watch the fields and the fire and the small wooden chapel at the edge of the road. You wonder if they dream too, and in that wondering, you drift off, held by a world that, though changing, still wraps itself around you like a familiar blanket, safe, slow, and gently sacred. Chapter 3, Part 2. Songs, Seasons, and Celebration. As always, no headings are used in the flow, just immersive storytelling. Some days feel different, even before they begin. You sense it in the air, in the way people walk, in the way they speak. There's a certain lightness, not in the weather, necessarily, but in the spirit of the village itself. And on this day, when you wake, you know that something is stirring. It begins before the sun rises. You wake not to the usual sounds of your mother stirring the hearth or the chicken scratching near the door, but to the distant rhythm of drums, slow and deep, carried gently through the trees. Not loud, not urgent, but steady, as if marking time not with the clock, but with the beat of the land itself. Your father is already up, fastening his cloak. He looks at you and gives a small nod. Festival day, he says, almost like a reminder. You blink away sleep and feel the flicker of anticipation. These days don't come often. When they do, they wrap themselves around the village like warm sun after rain. The whole village seems to shift. You pull on your best tunic, still plain, still patched, but one with cleaner seams and brighter dye. A reddish-brown color, faded by the years, but still bold against the gray of morning. Your sister braids her hair with bits of ribbon saved for just such days. Even your mother hums as she stirs the morning pot, her movements lighter than usual. Outside, the path is busier. Neighbors walking toward the center of the village, carrying baskets of food, bundles of dried herbs, small jugs of mead or ale. You pass the baker whose apron is dusted in flour, and he gives you a wink. The smell of bread follows behind him like a friendly ghost. There's no grand square, no towering hall, just the open patch where the main paths meet, where the grass has worn down to dirt, and the fire pit always smolders with something. Embers of last night's fire, or smoke from this morning's start. Today, people gather around it, talking softly, placing bowls on low tables built just for this occasion. The festival is for the season a welcome to warmth, a thank you to the soil, recognition that life still moves forward. You don't have a word for it exactly. Some call it the spring turning, others call it renewal. To you, it simply feels like a pause, a breath in the middle of the year where everyone remembers what it means to be alive together. Someone starts a tune on a flute, thin, high, fluttering like birdsong. A boy follows with a hand drum, his rhythm slow and curious. Then, an elder picks up a lyre. The notes come in gentle waves, not polished or perfect, but honest. You recognize the melody. It's one you've heard in winter, hummed beside the fire. But here under open sky, it feels brighter, like it's waking up too. You walk among the tables, your fingers brushing the rough wood. The food is laid out plainly: bowls of lentils, flatbread, stewed greens, root vegetables roasted in ash. There's meat too, rare and precious, cooked slowly on the edge of the fire pit. The smell makes your stomach tighten. A girl you know, not well, but well enough to smile at, offers you a piece of sweetened bread, made with honey. You thank her quietly. It's warm in your hands, sticky and soft. You take a small bite and hold the rest, not wanting it to end too soon. The villagers begin to gather around the fire. Someone, perhaps the elder, steps forward and raises a hand. No speech, no grand pronouncements, just a welcome, a simple gesture to begin. Then the songs start. These aren't the hymns from Brother Eamon's chapel, though he's there too, smiling softly from the edge of the gathering. These are older songs, the ones carried in memory, not on parchment. Songs about planting and harvest, about rivers that laugh and wolves that sing. Some are sad, some joyful, all are slow and winding. You hum along when you can. The melodies pull you in, like warm water around your ankles. A dance begins, a slow circle, hands joined, feet moving in time with the drum. You're drawn into it, not by choice, but by invitation. A hand reaches for yours, and suddenly you're part of the rhythm, the steps, the weaving line of people circling the fire. You don't know the dance, but it doesn't matter. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. You feel the earth beneath your feet soft, warm, welcoming. The sky above you is streaked with thin clouds, the sun filtered through them like a golden veil. You feel small, but in the best way. Like you belong. The music slows. People sit on blankets and low stools, passing bowls, sharing stories. You find yourself beside the storyteller, a man with a voice like moss-covered stone. He begins a tale about a raven who stole fire from the stars, and as he speaks, the children lean forward, wide-eyed. Even the adults listen, not because they believe every word, but because the story is part of them now. Passed from tongue to ear, from heart to hand. You think of your own stories, the ones you hear, the ones you remember, the ones you invent. Maybe someday, you'll tell them too. Maybe someday, someone will listen. As the sun dips lower, the fire burns brighter, shadows stretch, laughter echoes. A baby cries, then giggles. A woman sings softly as she nurses. The smoke curls into the sky, carrying with it the scent of pine and spice and joy. Before long, the stars begin to prick the sky, one by one. No one calls for an end. The festival doesn't finish with a bang or a bell. It simply fades, gently, like all things here. People begin to drift home, arms full, stomachs warm, hearts softer. You walk slowly back to your house, the ground cool beneath your boots, your cloak wrapped tight around your shoulders. The flute still lingers in your ears, the rhythm of the drum in your chest. You look up, past the trees, and the stars look brighter tonight, as if they were listening too. Inside, your home glows with leftover warmth. The fire still whispers in the hearth. Your mother sits near the edge of the bed, brushing your sister's hair. Your father removes his boots, sighing as he sets them down. The festival has ended, but the peace remains. You lie down on the straw, the familiar weight of the blanket settling over you like an old friend. The sweet taste of honey still faint on your tongue. Your body is tired, not the ache of labor, but the pleasant heaviness of movement, music, and laughter. As your eyes close, you think of the stories shared, the hands held, the songs sung, and you feel it, not excitement, not thrill, but contentment, the kind that only comes from belonging. And with that feeling, soft as wool and deep as dusk, you fall into sleep, safe, full, and quietly wrapped in the warmth of your people. Chapter 4. Part 1. Work and worth. No headings in the flow, just immersive sleep storytelling. You rise to the sound of hammers again, but this time not distant bells or festival drums. This is something closer, sharper, the ring of iron, striking iron, a rhythm of labor, purposeful, not hurried, the kind of sound that lives in the bones of a village like yours. You sit up beneath your blanket and stretch slowly. Your joints pop. Your eyes blink against the dim morning light. The air is damp and still, but there's a hum to the world today, a quiet energy moving through it, like something is being made, shaped. Outside, the path is slick with dew, the ground soft beneath your boots. You follow the sound instinctively, past the granary, past the place where children are drawing circles in the dust with sticks, toward the smithy. It isn't much, a wooden frame with open sides, a low roof blackened by smoke. Inside, the forge glows like the sun trapped in stone. The smith, a broad man with arms like tree trunks and soot on his cheeks, works shirtless despite the chill, beads of sweat rising from his skin as he bends over the anvil. You stand at the edge of the structure, careful not to get too close. He doesn't look up, but he knows you're there. He always does. He brings the hammer down again, a clean strike, and the iron responds with a bright note that fades into the air like a bell from another world. You watch him work. There's something hypnotic about it. The way he moves, the way the metal changes color, black, then red, then orange, then almost white, before he plunges it into a barrel of water with a hiss that sounds like a beast breathing. Steam rises, the metal hardens, takes shape. He's making something new today. A blade, maybe, or a plow point. You can't tell yet, but it doesn't matter. The point is the making, the shaping, the way fire and sweat and rhythm become something lasting. After a while, he pauses, sets the hammer down, and glances at you. Want to help? He asks, voice low and steady. You nod, unsure what that means. He hands you the bellows handle and gestures. You begin to pump, slow and even. The fire responds. It leaps higher, hot, alive. You feel it in your cheeks, in your chest. The forge doesn't just warm the space, it fills it, becomes it. He nods once, then returns to the anvil. You work in silence, but it's a good silence. Not empty, shared, full. He lets you help with something smaller, a simple hook. Just a bent piece of iron, but one that will hold a lantern or hang a pot. He guides your hand, corrects your grip, doesn't rush you. The iron resists at first, but then yields just enough. You feel it bend beneath the force. You feel proud, not loudly, but quietly, like a seed just planted. When it's done, he holds it up, examines it, and hands it to you. Yours, he says. And that's that. You carry it in your pocket the rest of the day, fingers curling around it every now and then, reminding yourself that you made something, that your hands did something useful, permanent. The village is alive with other crafts too. The weaver's hut smells of wool and dye. Inside, the loom clicks and creaks, the threads pulled taut like the strings of an unseen harp. You sit and watch the pattern grow, a line of brown, then green, then a soft blue that reminds you of river stones. The weaver hums as she works, her fingers moving with the precision of someone who's done this every day of her life. You ask her about the dyes, and she shows you roots and berries, leaves soaked in water, clay dust mixed with vinegar. Nothing comes easy, nothing comes quickly, but everything comes eventually. With time, with patience. You try weaving for a while. It's harder than it looks. Your fingers fumble, the thread tangles, but she smiles and helps, and by the end, you've added a small, uneven line of red to the cloth. She lets you leave it there. Your mark, she says. Even the woodcutter's work has rhythm. You watch as he shapes a yoke from a solid branch, the curve following the grain of the tree like a secret being revealed. He doesn't speak much either, just works, hands steady, tools sharp. Each shaving that falls to the floor smells of pine and sap. You inhale it deeply and remember how much the forest gives. Not just wood, but peace. Later, you return home and sit with your mother as she repairs a basket. The weave has come loose along the rim, and she threads new rushes in between the old ones. You ask if she wants help, and she smiles, hands you a bundle, shows you where to tuck and twist. You work slowly, fingers unsure, but she doesn't correct you, just nods. There, she says. Good. The fire burns low again as evening comes. Your hook still in your pocket, a thread from the weaving, clinging to your tunic, your fingers stained with sap from the wood, tiny traces of the day, carried quietly like souvenirs. You sit by the hearth and think of all the hands in this village, the ones that dig and mend and shape, the ones that carry water, the ones that catch fish, the ones that heal, each hand doing something different, each hand necessary, and you think maybe this is what worth is. Not gold, not fame, but usefulness. Being part of something, making something, fixing something, being someone that others can rely on. As the stars begin to blink awake above the thatched roof, and the air cools with the hush of twilight, you lie back on your straw bed, the familiar scent of smoke and wool settling around you. The village grows still. The forge sleeps. The loom is silent, but you feel all of it still moving. The quiet heartbeat of work well done. You close your eyes with the soft knowledge that tomorrow there will be more to do. And that, somehow, feels perfect. The village is quieter than usual this morning. Not still, never still, but slower, as if holding its breath. You notice it as you stretch and rise. The cool air brushing your face, the scent of wet grass and faint wood smoke drifting in through the shutters. There's a hush to the world today, like something is waiting just beyond the trees. Your mother is already up, wiping down a wooden bowl with a cloth, her movements brisk but focused. She doesn't say much, but you see the extra care she takes. The way she smooths her apron, the way she checks the bread twice in the coals. You hear it next, the soft jingle of metal. Hoofbeats, light but clear, not from the fields, not from your neighbors, from beyond, from away. You step outside and follow the sound, your boots pressing into the soft earth of the village path. Others are gathering, two heads turning toward the road, voices murmuring in tones of curiosity and caution. And then he appears, a trader, a traveler, a figure wrapped in a faded cloak, seated atop a small, weary-looking horse. Behind him, a cart creaks gently with every movement, its wheels heavy with sacks and boxes and bundles of fabric tied with twine. Bells dangle from the harness, not loud, but enough to announce him softly, almost like a song. He smiles as he approaches, lifting a hand in greeting. His beard is long, and his skin weathered by countless suns. His eyes are sharp, but kind. You've seen traders before, though rarely. They pass through when the seasons are right, never staying, never hurrying, always in motion. He stops in the center of the village, just beside the fire pit, and begins to unpack. The cart is a puzzle box, and he opens it one layer at a time. First, bright cloths and colors that seem impossible. Oranges like fire, blues like the deepest dusk. Then, small tools you've never seen. Blades with curved handles, wooden spoons carved with delicate spirals, even glass round, bubbled, catching the light in strange ways. You move closer, as do the others. Children gather near the wheels of the cart, their eyes wide. The trader pulls out beads, tiny and green, like moss-covered pebbles. He lets them fall through his fingers, and they sparkle in the sun. No one speaks loudly. It's not that they're afraid, it's something else. Reverence, maybe, or wonder. Your father arrives with a bundle under his arm, cured leather, thick and supple. He nods to the trader and holds it out. The two men speak quietly. No coins are exchanged, just goods. Leather for salt, a small clay jug of oil for a handful of nails, 2 hens for a length of waxed thread. Barter is the language of the village. It moves like breath, give, take, balance. Everyone watches, not with greed, but with care. You don't trade lightly. Everything you offer costs something. Time, labor, memory. The trader unwraps a cloth parcel and reveals a small wooden flute. It's smooth, simple, but beautifully made. You can't help but step closer. Your fingers itch to touch it, to lift it, to see if it sings. He notices, of course. Traders always notice. He tilts his head and asks what you have to offer. You reach into your pocket, not expecting much, and pull out the iron hook you made at the forge. You hold it out, uncertain. He takes it, studies it, smiles. Honest work, he says. And he hands you the flute. Just like that. You don't play it. Yet, you simply hold it, feel its weight, the smoothness of its surface. You wonder where it came from, whose hands carved it, what skies it has seen. All day, the village is softer. The presence of the trader brings something unspoken, a reminder that there's a world beyond the trees, beyond the stream, beyond the hills you've never climbed. A world of stories and strangers, of new songs and strange spices. He tells tales, of course, always. As the sun begins to lower and the sky warms with the soft gold of evening, the villagers gather again. The trader sits by the fire pit and begins. He speaks of far coasts where the sea is warm and the sand white, of towns made from stone and light, where markets stretch for miles and camels walk between stalls. He tells of a land where birds speak in whistles and fish fly from the water like silver arrows. He speaks slowly, his voice low and even, the flames dancing in his eyes. You listen, holding the flute in your lap, the air cooling around you. You wonder how much of his stories are true. But truth, in this moment, doesn't matter. Only the telling does. Only the sharing. As the stars appear, he returns to his cart and rolls out a worn blanket beneath the sky. He sleeps beside his horse, wrapped in a cloak faded by years of journeys. No one bothers him. No one questions. Everyone understands. The next morning, he's gone. Before the sun has risen, before the cockerel cries, the cart tracks lead away. From the village, the grass still pressed by the wheels. A few beads are left behind in the dust. A gift, perhaps, or maybe just forgotten. You sit by the stream later, the flute in your hands. You bring it to your lips and blow, soft and unsure. A sound comes not perfect, but clear. You try again, a note, then another. The song doesn't come all at once, but you can feel it, waiting. In that moment, you think of the road, of the places beyond, of all the things you don't know yet, but might someday. You don't want to leave, not now, yet, but it's comforting to know the world is bigger than the village, that there are stories still untold, that there is music still to find. The wind rustles the leaves, the stream flows on, the sun glints off the water like a coin in motion. You lie back in the grass and watch the sky, and slowly, the world grows quiet again. Sleep comes softly, carried on the whisper of a distant journey, and you let it take you. There is a kind of silence only found in early morning fields, the kind that lives between the heartbeat of the land and the breath of the sky. You wake to that silence today, not startled or restless, but slowly, as though your body already knows the day will move gently, without urgency. You sit up, stretch beneath the rough wool blanket, and listen. The house is still. Your mother hums faintly in the next room, crushing something with a mortar and pestle. You hear the soft clink of stone on stone. The scent of dried lavender drifts toward you, calming, familiar. You pull on your boots and step outside. The village is coated in a thin veil of mist, softening every edge. The trees are quiet, the earth damp, the kind of morning where you can almost believe the world is holding its breath. You walk slowly along the path, past the edge of the village, toward the place where the healer lives. Her hut is smaller than most, but older. The roof sags slightly, covered in moss and bird feathers. Herbs hang in thick bundles from the eave: sage, marjoram, wormwood, thyme. Their colors faded, their scent strong and grounding. She sits on a stool near the doorway, grinding something dark and fragrant in a bowl. She nods to you as you approach, not surprised. It's as though she knew you'd come. Cold season's changing, she says simply. Time to gather before the frost does. You walk with her that day, into the woods, into the low places, where the damp air hangs thick and the light filters through leaves like stained glass. She teaches you without teaching, just names, gestures, small stories wrapped in observation. This one here, a creeping plant with pointed leaves, good for fevers, she says. That one tall, with purple flowers, makes dreams strange if brewed too strong. The bark of this tree, she says, can be boiled and pressed against a swollen joint. This root, if dried and ground, can soothe the belly, but not too much, never too much. You crouch beside her, hands in the earth, the cool soil pressing beneath your nails. She shows you how to dig gently, how to leave the small plants to grow, how to thank the ground, not with words, necessarily, but with presence. With care, the forest becomes something else when seen this way, not just trees and shade, but a library, a kitchen, a chapel. You begin to notice the quiet signs. The way certain birds gather before rain, how the bark peels from trees in damp weather, how ants build their hills higher when the frost comes early. You never knew how much the earth speaks and how softly. By midday, your basket is half full. Sprigs of yarrow, a pinch of dried resin, some pale yellow flowers whose name you forget, but whose scent will linger on your hands for hours. The healer smiles as you walk back, says you have a memory for plants. You don't answer, but you feel a warmth in your chest. Back in the village, she hangs the herbs to dry in her hut. The rafters are already crowded with bunches upside down, plants that sway when the wind passes through. The room smells like 10,000 summers caught in rope. You sit by the fire as she makes a small poultice for an aching knee. She shows you how to bind its soft cloth, warm water, patient hands. You watch her and wonder how much of this will live in you one day, how much will pass down through your fingers, how much you'll remember in 100 quiet mornings. Like this one. Aside, the mist is lifting. The sun begins to press through the clouds, a pale disk just above the tree line. The world smells like damp moss and wood smoke. You walk home slowly, your hands still stained green, your mind filled not with big thoughts, but small, useful ones, about roots, about rain, about how everything has its season. Where that evening, you sit with your father beneath the lean-to as he sharpens a knife. The whetstone hisses with each pass. He doesn't speak much, just gestures at the sky. South wind, he says after a while, might bring rain tomorrow. You look up. The clouds are long and low, soft like pulled wool. The birds fly slightly closer to the ground than usual. You nod. You see it to now. The night comes softly. A lantern is lit. The shadows deepen. You help your mother stir a pot of broth thick with lentils, leeks, and a sprig of something she doesn't name, but you recognize it. You saw it today, growing near the stones at the edge of the woods. You eat in silence, warmed by more than just the bowl. Sleep doesn't take long to find you that night. You lie down with the faint scent of herbs still clinging to your fingers. The wind moves gently outside the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once, then goes quiet. You close your eyes, and the forest is still there, not wild, but wise, full of secrets, full of healing. And as you drift, you dream of green paths and silver leaves, of smooth stones and warm firelight, and the quiet, knowing smile of someone who reads the world not in books, but in bark. You've never owned a clock, nor known anyone who has, but still, you know the hours. You know them not by numbers, but by light. The way the sun tilts through the trees, the way the shadow of the grain hut stretches long and lean across the ground by late afternoon. You know the hush that falls before dusk, and the blue of morning before the birds begin to stir. The time, here, is not something counted, it's something felt. You wake today just before the light touches the shutters. The room glows faintly, like a dream fading into morning. Your breath is soft, slow, clouding the air. The fire has burned low again, just coals now, their glow faint but steady. You pull the blanket closer and lie still for a while. There's no bell to rush you, no horn, no signal but the sky. And the sky today is quiet. Outside, the frost still holds the ground, each blade of grass tipped with silver. The air is so still that even the birds wait a little longer before calling. You dress slowly, wrap your cloak around your shoulders, and step out into the cold. The village is still hushed, as if everyone is moving just a little more gently. Even the livestock seem quieter, their breath curling softly into the morning. Your grandfather is already outside, near the standing stone at the edge of the path. He's watching the sky not in wonder, but with purpose. His eyes narrowed slightly, hands behind his back, brow furrowed. He's done this every morning for as long as you can remember, and probably longer. You stand beside him for a while. Not speaking, he points upward, toward a faint smear of clouds near the horizon. High weather, he says. Might turn tomorrow. You nod. You're not sure how he knows, but he always does. Later, he brings out a bowl and fills it with water. He sets it on a flat stone and watches the surface. It seems like a game at first, but it's not. He's watching the way the wind moves across it, the way the ripples shift. A kind of reading, like how one might read a page if there were pages. But here, the wind is the text. The sky is the script. He shows you a stick planted in the ground near the garden, notched at several points along its length. As the sun rises, the shadow crawls slowly from one mark to the next. He tells you how each mark means something. Morning meal, field work, time to call the animals back. He doesn't call it science, but it is. You begin to notice more. The way the crows circle differently when weather shifts. How the smell of the air thickens before snow. How the river's voice changes higher in spring, lower and slower in autumn. Not things you're taught directly, just things you absorb. Like warmth from the fire, like songs hummed in the next room. In the evening, you walk up the hill with a few others. It's something the villagers do now and then. When the sky is clear, someone brings a candle in a glass jar. Another brings a woven blanket to sit on. The grass is damp, but no one complains. You all lie back in the cold, looking up. There are no torches, no lamps. The stars are free to show themselves, and they do. Pinpricks of light scatter the sky like spilled flour on a dark table. The Milky Way arcs across the night like a river of ash. Someone points to a cluster and names it. You've heard the name before, but it always feels new. Someone else tells a story about a hunter chasing a deer across the heavens. Another voice says the stars are the eyes of the gods watching. You just watch. You don't need a reason. Your grandfather gestures toward a faint line of stars and says, when they're there, and the moon is right, the river will flood. And sure enough, when it happens weeks later, a slow swelling of the stream, a gentle rise in the banks. You remember his words. You begin to trust the sky in ways you didn't before. Time doesn't tick here. It breathes. It hums through the cycles of the moon. It curls in the smoke that rises at dusk. It whispers in the wind that sneaks through cracks in the shutters. Some days feel longer, but not because of minutes. Because of tasks. Because of moments. Because of the way your muscles ache after working wood, or the way your hands sting from icy water drawn from the well. Some nights feel shorter, because the fire is warm and the voices around it are soft, and the dark seems less lonely than usual. You begin to mark your own time not with numbers, but with memories. The day you first lifted the bellows at the forge, the morning you walked alone to the healer's hut, the evening the trader gave you a flute, the night you saw your first shooting star. These become your calendar. One evening, the sky opens again, clear and endless, and you lie beneath it, with no one else around. You try to count the stars, but lose track. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and the cold fades. You dream of nothing and everything, of water, of smoke, of footsteps in frost, of the quiet certainty that you are part of something far older than words, a rhythm older than thought. And in that rhythm, you sleep. Not deeply perhaps, but fully, in a kind of time that asks nothing of you but stillness. And slowly, you drift. As the stars continue to mark the hours, and the earth turns beneath you, you don't remember when you first heard the word for God. It may have been in your mother's voice as she tucked you into bed, her hand brushing a loose strand of hair from your forehead. Or perhaps in your grandfather's murmured thanks over the evening meal, voice low and steady, as if speaking to someone seated just beyond the room's edge. Faith here doesn't live in books or sermons. It's in gestures, routines, silences. You've seen it in the way your father touches the doorframe each morning before stepping outside, in how your neighbor sets a sprig of yew beside the window during storms, in the rhythm of prayers whispered into the soil before planting. Today is a still day. The clouds hang heavy overhead, but the air is dry. You rise slowly, breath soft, limbs warm beneath the blanket. Outside, the sky is pale and gray, not unfriendly, just thoughtful. Your mother hands you a small loaf of bread and tells you to bring it to the chapel. The chapel sits at the far edge of the village, beyond the stream and beneath the yew tree that curves like an old hand toward the sky. It's not grand, just a low building of weathered stone, its roof patched with moss and straw. The wooden door creaks, and the hinges groan softly when you open it. Inside, the air is cooler, quieter. The light filters in through a single window, stained with soft green and blue. Dust moves in its beams like tiny drifting stars. At the front of the room is a small table. On it rests a worn wooden cross, a bowl of water, and a candle that always seems to burn, though no one remembers lighting it. You walk slowly down the center, your boots echoing faintly on the flagstone floor. You place the bread beside the bowl and pause for a moment, not speaking, just pausing. You don't know exactly what to do, but it feels right to wait. You hear the door open behind you, then close. Brother Eamon steps in, robes brushing the ground, hair silver at the temples. He doesn't speak, just nods. His presence feels like a deep breath, calming. He tends the candle, adjusts the cross, hums softly under his breath. It's not a hymn, not quite, just a tune, familiar, unnamed. He motions for you to sit, and you do on one of the low benches. The chapel is empty but not lonely. Its walls hold stories, prayers, quiet promises whispered into stone. Brother Eamon joins you. He doesn't preach. He simply talks about the turning of seasons, the miracle of bread rising, the patience of trees. His voice is gentle, even, like a stream flowing over smooth stones. He tells you how long ago people carved symbols into stone to speak to the stars, how they built circles of rock, not just for gathering, but for aligning with the sky, how belief was always part of the land, before names, before books, a kind of listening. You leave the chapel feeling lighter, not because anything has changed, but because something old was remembered. Later, you help your neighbor gather flowers from the edge of the woods, not for decoration, but for placing at the foot of the old stone just outside the village. A grave, maybe, or something older. No one is quite sure, but they bring flowers every year on the same day. When you ask why, the woman simply says, "To remember." She doesn't explain further. The petals are laid gently, each color placed with care. Red for courage, blue for sorrow, white for peace. A silent arrangement, an offering to time. You sit nearby, watching the wind lift the stems, the way the leaves rustle like soft speech. The stone stands quiet, unmoved, but somehow listening. Back in the village, someone has carved a sun into the side of the well. You run your fingers over it, a simple circle with lines radiating outward. You've seen it 100 times, but today it feels deeper, as though whoever carved it wanted to say something without words. That night, the villagers gather around the fire, not for a festival, not for anything grand, just to be together. Someone begins to sing a low, slow melody that drifts like smoke. You've heard it before. It's one of the old ones. No words, just sound. A sound that carries something sacred. Someone else adds a second voice, then a third. You don't sing, but you listen. The stars rise above. The fire crackles, and in the space between song and silence, you feel something. Not sharp, not sudden, just present. Like warmth beside you, like a deep knowing. Faith, here, isn't thunder or vision. It's a hand resting on your shoulder in the dark. It's the breath before sleep, the hush before dawn. It's the comfort of not needing to understand everything just to be part of it. You lie down that night with the scent of smoke in your hair and the echo of song in your bones. The candle in the chapel still burns, even if no one sees it, and as your eyes close, you feel held, not by walls or rules or names, but by something older, something still, and in that stillness, you sleep. It begins with a noise. Not loud, not sharp, just something strange. You hear it while lying in bed, a rustle outside, a creak, the distant bark of a dog that doesn't live nearby. Your eyes open slowly in the dark, your breath warm against the scratchy wool of your blanket. The fire in the hearth is low, just embers now, glowing faint red like sleepy eyes. The house is quiet, but something in your chest stirs, a feeling, not a fact, like being watched, like being remembered by something older than words. You pull the blanket tighter and lie still. Everyone in the village has stories. Not all are spoken during the day. Some only emerge near the fire, after the bowls are cleared and the shutters close tight. Tales of flickering lights in the forest, of cold winds that blow without cause, of trees that whisper, not with leaves, but with memory. You remember once, as a child, your grandmother holding your hand and showing you a bowl of water under the moonlight. "Look close," she whispered. "Sometimes the future visits here." You didn't see anything, just your own reflection, but still the moment stayed, like a dream you can't quite remember. Superstition here doesn't mean foolishness. It's a kind of safety, a map through the dark. You rise early the next morning, unsettled but not frightened. The sky is pale and the frost thick on the ground. You go to the well, dip the bucket, and hear something, a soft humming from the other side. A woman standing, with her hands on the stones, eyes closed. She's not praying, just listening. She opens her eyes and sees you, smiles gently. "The well remembers," she says. You nod, though you're not sure why. And yet it makes sense. In the village, charms hang by many doors, woven bundles of straw, feathers tied with string, stones stacked just so. You've asked about them before, and each time, the answer is different. To keep away fever, someone once said. For luck, said another. So the dead don't forget us, whispered a third. Even if no one agrees on their meaning, no one removes them. They've always been there. That's enough. You visit the healer again, and this time she's not tending herbs, she's burning them. A clay bowl filled with coals sits on the floor, and from it rises a thin thread of smoke, sharp and fragrant. She waves her hands gently through it, then passes them over your head, murmuring softly, "A cure," she says. "A clearing." You don't ask what she means. The smell lingers in your hair for hours, a mix of mugwort, pine resin, and something you can't name. It reminds you of wind through tall trees, of dreams half remembered. That night, the moon rises full and bright, casting silver shadows through the cracks in the shutters. You sit outside for a moment, alone, your breath forming clouds in the chill, and then you hear it again. Not a sound, exactly. More like a feeling, a tug at the edge of your awareness. The village seems different at night, softer, older, like something remembering itself. You walk quietly down the path, past the stone circle, past the ash tree with the hollow knot. You see something flutter on the branch, a strip of cloth, tied in a knot, a wish, maybe, or a warning. You sit on a rock and look up. The stars are watching again. You wonder if they know your name, if they ever forget. When you return home, your mother is waiting. She doesn't ask where you've been. She just places a sprig of rosemary beneath your pillow. For sleep, she says. You lie down, the scent earthy and sharp, grounding. You dream of things that feel both near and far. A river that runs uphill. A bird that speaks in a language made of wind. A circle of people standing in a clearing. Hands joined. Not speaking, just listening. You wake before dawn with a strange calm in your chest. You spend the next day helping to clean the boundaries of the village, a practice that's not talked about much. Just done. Stones are reset. Branches are gathered. Offerings are left, a bit of bread, a cup of water, a flower pressed between two leaves. And no one says who they're for. But everyone leaves something. That evening, someone brings out an old fiddle, not perfectly tuned, but full of warmth. Children dance in the firelight, and elders clap softly, smiles slow and distant. You hear laughter, gentle, never loud, the kind that eases the chest. The kind that makes fear feel far away. Someone tells a story about a fox that turned into a man. Another tells of a dream that led her to a lost ring buried under the steps. Everyone listens. No one questions. You sit close to the fire and think maybe the unknown isn't meant to be solved. Maybe it's meant to be respected, shared, wrapped in stories like cloth around a stone. Not explained, but carried. When you return to bed that night, the rosemary is still beneath your pillow. You close your eyes and feel the house settle around you, the wood creaking softly, the wind brushing past the shutters like a sigh, and as you drift off, you sense it again, the quiet watchfulness of the world, not a threat, just a presence, a shadow beside you that doesn't mean harm, just a whisper, you are not alone. And with that, you sleep, softly, fully, like a candle resting in the dark. The seasons here don't begin on a calendar. They arrive in the body. You feel it first in the mornings, in the air, in your fingertips, in the way the light lands, softer across the thatched rooftops. A coolness not present the day before. A softness to the wind that hints at change. You wake up slowly. Your breath a little more visible, your limbs wrapped tighter beneath the blanket. Outside, someone's already lit a small fire, not for cooking, just for warmth. The smoke curls lazily upward, joining the early morning mist. You rub your hands together and walk toward the edge of the village, where the trees begin to turn. The leaves have started to change. A tea first. It's only a few gold brushed into green like forgotten sunlight. But soon, they'll all go. The path to the forest will be painted with rust and amber. The sound beneath your boots will change from soft earth to a quiet crunch. The forest will whisper differently. You return with an armful of firewood, your cheeks pink from the chill. Your mother is drying apples by the hearth. The slices, thin and carefully arranged. Beside them, strips of meat hang on a wooden rack. A quiet preparation. No drama, no panic. Just the gentle gathering that happens every year. Your father sharpens his tools, oiling the handles, stacking them in the shed. The granary is checked, the roof patched. The animals moved closer to the village. Not because it's urgent, but because it's time. Autumn doesn't knock. It waits patiently at the door until you notice it's already inside. You help gather the last of the root vegetables from the garden. Carrots, leeks, onions wrapped in soil like sleeping things. You brush them gently, lay them in baskets, store them in the dark. The cellar smells of cool earth and garlic braid. You walk past the shelves with your fingers brushing the stone wall, counting. Nothing is rushed, but nothing is left undone. In the evenings, the village glows a little longer. Candles burn deeper into the night. People linger by fires. Stories stretch further, sleep comes sooner. Someone mentions the equinox, the balance of day and night. You don't track the date, but you feel it. The sun lowers a little faster, shadows stretch a little longer. The animals are quieter at dusk, and when the first frost finally comes, you're ready. You wait to see the ground covered in white dust, not snow, just the lightest kiss of ice on every surface. Your breath clouds as you step outside. The thatch glistens. The well rim is frozen. Even the chickens move slower, but the hearth inside is warm. The bread has risen in the bowl. The fire crackles with soft promise. You think of the turning wheel, not a machine, but a rhythm, something ancient, something slow and constant. The healer visits again, this time with bundles of dried herbs meant for winter illness. She leaves, one at your home, a mix of thyme, elderflower, and dried rosehip. Your mother hangs it above the door, not because anyone's sick, but because it's what's done. It smells of memory. Someone sets up a small altar near the edge of the village. Just stones, feathers, and a few berries. An offering, not to a specific god, perhaps, but to the land itself. To say thank you, to say we notice. One night, near the fire, your grandfather tells you how the year doesn't end in December. It ends, he says, when the last leaf falls. You watch the tree outside your home every day after that. One leaf remains longer than the rest, clinging stubbornly to the branch even through wind and frost. And when it finally falls, you feel it in your chest. The old year has gone. Winter begins not with cold, but with quiet. The world doesn't stop. It slows. The days are short but full. The animals are fed. The stores are checked. The woolen blankets brought down from the loft. Candles are made in pairs, one for light, one for prayer. You help your neighbor patch her cloak. The needle is cold in your fingers, but the work is warm. She gives you a small button in return, carved from horn, shaped like a star. You sew it into your own tunic later, near the edge, not where anyone will see, but you'll feel it. A reminder that things are shared. That time is never passed alone. On the longest night of the year, the villagers gather in the hall. It's not a feast that will come later, when the sun returns. Tonight is simpler. Bread, stew, a little honey, and voices. A girl stands near the hearth and begins to recite. A poem, maybe, or just words. They're about the stars, about the dark, about how even silence has a shape. Everyone listens. No one interrupts. When she finishes, the wind moves past the windows, as though applauding. You lie in bed that night beneath layers of wool and fur. The candle burns low beside you. The cold air brushes your cheeks, but your body is warm. Outside, the trees sleep. The animals curl into themselves. The moon watches everything. And you drift into sleep knowing that time will turn again, that spring will come, that the world always moves, even when it's still. And with that quiet certainty, you rest. The year turns, and you turn with it. The days are short now. The sun rises slowly and sets faster than it should. You wake before the light and find the hearth nearly cold, just the soft glow of hidden coals, barely alive beneath the ash. You pull your cloak around your shoulders, press your feet to the floor, and move quietly toward the warmth. There's no hurry. The whole world has slowed. Even the animals move differently in winter, slower, closer, more careful. You notice it in the chickens huddled together near the coop wall, in the sheep that stay near the fence instead of wandering, in the quiet breath of your father as he works beside the fire, sharpening a tool slowly, as though the very edge of time had dulled. Breakfast is simple. A thick porridge, warm and filling, a scrap of cheese, a piece of dark bread still warm from last night's oven. The taste isn't surprising, but it's comforting. Each bite is familiar as it has been for so many mornings before. Outside, The frost holds everything still. Trees stand white-laced and silent. The paths between homes are lined with footprints that don't last long before new frost settles. Even the sound of your boots on the frozen ground is softened by the snow, a muffled crunch, like steps inside a dream. You walk toward the granary with your father. He tests the barrels, checks the cords, runs his fingers along the cold surface of the clay jars holding last summer's harvest. His breath forms small clouds as he mutters numbers to himself. You don't speak, but you're learning. You see what he sees. What's enough? What's missing? What must be stretched? The winter is not feared here. It's understood. It's not the enemy. It's the test. And every gesture, every meal saved, every stitch in a blanket, every log dried and stacked in autumn is an answer. You spend more time indoors these days. Not because you're idle, but because the work shifts. There's wool to spin, leather to mend, knives to polish, grain to sift. Hours stretch long, but not empty. In the evenings, the fire becomes everything. A center not just of warmth, but of sound, of story. Your grandfather tells tales while turning a bone-handled knife in his hand, slow, thoughtful stories about things that might never have happened, but feel true anyway. Your mother hums as she works, patching a tunic. The needle flashes briefly in the firelight, then vanishes again. Sometimes the only sound is wood popping in the hearth and the whisper of the wind through the cracks in the shutters. And sometimes that's enough. There are rituals for the cold. One evening, your neighbor brings over a warm rock wrapped in cloth, something her mother used to do, she says, for the feet before sleep. She laughs as she hands it to you. Don't burn yourself. You hold it in both hands, feeling the heat spread into your palms, up your arms, into your chest. You place it beneath your blanket and sleep deeper that night than you have in weeks. The village doesn't stop in winter. It just shifts inward. No one travels far. No one wanders long. But the bonds between people pull tighter. You help your elder carry wood one morning. In return, he gives you a handful of dried berries and a story about a bear that once walked upright into his father's barn. You don't ask if it's true. That's not the point. On another day, you help your mother boil honey and herbs into a thick syrup, something for sore throats. It bubbles slowly over the coals, filling the house with a scent that reminds you of pine trees and old cupboards. She stores it in a small jar with a cloth tied around the top. Just in case, she says. You spend one afternoon by yourself, walking slowly along the frozen stream. The surface glistens like polished glass. Too thin to walk on, too thick to ignore. You crouch beside it and trace your finger across a patch of snow-dusted ice. You listen to the quiet, to your breath, to the world beneath the surface. Paused, but not gone. You find a branch with frost feathers growing along one side, delicate, perfect, like someone carved them in the night. You don't take it home. You just look, and then let it stay. As midwinter arrives, the villagers mark the longest night, not with noise, but with quiet light. Small candles in windows, a ring of pine and holly hung above the chapel door. A silent meal where everyone brings a little of what they can spare and shares it without question. You sit beside your grandfather during this meal, and he places his hand on yours. Spring will return, he says softly, but not yet. Now we rest. You remember that, and hold it with you. The snow falls gently that night. Big flakes, slow as ash. You watch them from the doorway for a long time before sleep calls. And when you finally lie down, the world feels smaller, softer, like it's wrapping itself around you, protecting you. You fall asleep listening to the fire breathe, and outside, the snow keeps falling, not hurried, not loud, just enough to soften the world, and with each flake, a little more silence, a little more sleep. You wake to the sound of the forge, not loud, Not sharp, just a deep, rhythmic breath of bellows and the faint clang of metal against metal. It's a comforting sound, one that seems to rise from the very bones of the village, as old and steady as the earth beneath it. You stretch, shake the sleep from your limbs, and dress slowly in the dim morning light. The fire from last night still smolders in the hearth, a thin curl of smoke rising as you pass. Your boots creak as you walk the familiar path to the smith's workshop, where the air always smells of iron and oak and heat. The forge is already glowing when you arrive, the coals burning red beneath the blackened chimney. The smith is there, sleeves rolled to the elbow, sweat already gleaming on his brow despite the cold morning. He nods at you, not a greeting exactly, more of an acknowledgement, like saying, "Yes, you're here. Let's begin." You don't speak much in the forge. Words get lost in the hiss of steam, the ring of hammer on steel. Instead, you watch, you learn. The smith moves like a man in a trance, his hands knowing the shape of every tool, the weight of every swing, the moment to quench and the moment to strike. You pass him a rod of iron, and he nods. You pump the bellows as the fire grows brighter. The heat presses against your face like a second sun. And then the transformation. The iron glows. The sparks leap. The hammer falls. Again, again, again. Each blow sends a vibration through the room, through your chest, down your spine. Not loud, not painful, just deep. Like thunder echoing in stone. You watch as the shape emerges. Not all at once, but slowly. A curve here, a flattening there. What was once formless becomes familiar. A blade, a hinge, a horseshoe. You learn that metal has a kind of memory. Strike it wrong, and it resists. Move with it, and it sings. Later, you help quench the piece in the trough, steam blooming upward in a ghostly swirl. The air smells of earth and heat, and something older like storms and memory. You feel it in your hands long after the work is done. You leave the forge with soot on your sleeves, the sound of hammers still ringing faintly in your ears. And then, you pass by the weaver's hut. She sits by the open window, fingers dancing across the loom. Her work is quieter than the smith's. No fire, no steel, but no less powerful. Threads stretch in even lines, pulled taut like the strings of an unseen instrument. You watch as she moves the shuttle back and forth, the pattern emerging, slowly, row by row, each thread placed not by accident, but with care. She tells you the colors come from the land: oak bark for browns, woad for blue, onion skin for gold. She dips the wool by hand, dries it in the sun, spins it on a spindle that sings when it turns. You try it once. Your fingers clumsy at first, but she smiles and shows you again. And slowly, the thread comes to life beneath your touch. You carry a small piece of woven cloth in your pocket now, not because you need it, but because it reminds you of something soft, something made, not bought. Further along the lane, the potter shapes a lump of clay on the wheel. His hands are thick, rough, but gentle. The wheel turns with a quiet murmur. The clay spins, and from the shapeless mass, a bowl begins to form. He doesn't look at you, just keeps shaping. Takes time, he says, but everything worth keeping does. You nod. You're starting to understand. The village moves slowly, but it moves with purpose. Every day, someone is making, fixing, mending, preparing. A chair leg rejoined, a fence post reshaped, a bucket rehooped with iron bands. No one calls it art, but it is. It's survival turned graceful. In the evening, your father carves a spoon from a piece of ashwood. You sit beside him in the firelight, watching the shavings curl to the floor like ribbons. He says nothing, just carves, the shape appearing under his hands with quiet certainty. You take the spoon when he's done, still rough, not yet polished, and hold it like treasure. That night, you dream of hands, big hands, small hands, old hands, young, all making something, shaping, binding, mending, a net drawn from flax, a flute carved from bone, a basket woven from reeds. And in that dream nothing is wasted, not the scraps, not the hours, not the effort. You wake to the smell of bread. The baker has risen early, as always. The ovens are warm. The air is sweet. You pass the bakery and nod, and she tosses you a small heel of bread, hot, crusted, perfect. Everything here takes time. Everything is made by hand. And in that slowness, in that care, in the marks left by fingers and fire and thread, you find something steady, something that never rushes, something that doesn't need to. You carry it with you as the day ends, and your breath slows, and the stars rise again above the rooftops. The sound of hammers has faded. The loom is still. The fire has burned low. But what was made remains, and so do you, safe, warm, ready to sleep. You notice it first in the air, a feeling, a shift, not quite excitement but movement, a low hum beneath the usual rhythm of things. Children whisper more, adults make lists aloud. Someone is sweeping the dirt path near the center of the village, which hasn't been swept in weeks. You hear your mother mention the word traitor, and suddenly, the week feels different. It happens once, maybe twice in a season. Someone from beyond, a cart creaking over the hill, a mule, a bundle of things from far places. Not the world beyond mountains and oceans, but the next cluster of fields, the next winding trail, a place just far enough that it feels touched by the unknown. You spend the morning helping to prepare, apples polished, cloth folded, a handful of clay buttons tied neatly with string, everything done slowly, with care. Because trading here is not about price, it's about presence. By midday, the cart arrives. It doesn't look like much: old wood, patched leather, one squeaky wheel. But to you, it feels like a chest of treasures. The man pulling it is wrapped in wool, his beard thick with frost. He carries a walking stick carved with marks you don't recognize. And he smiles. He doesn't speak right away, just nods. Parks his cart near the large stone, sits, unwraps a piece of cheese, eats, waits. It's part of the ritual. No rush, no calling out, just being seen. Then slowly, the villagers approach. One brings a bundle of dried herbs, another, a basket of eggs. You bring your small pouch of buttons, your palms slightly sweaty. The trader examines each offering without judgment. He runs his thumb along the cloth, lifts the herbs to his nose, taps each button gently on the cart rail to test its strength. He offers not coin, but goods in return: a sliver of beeswax, a bit of ground salt, a tiny knife with a handle wrapped in twine. You choose the beeswax not for use, but for the way it smells, like honey and sunlight. He places it in your hand and nods once. Trade made. You sit near the cart and watch others barter. There's laughter, quiet negotiations, the touch of fingers on wool and iron. No shouting, no deception, just exchange. One piece of the world for another. Later, the trader opens a small chest and pulls out things not for trade, but for wonder: a round, flat stone with a hole through its center, a dried flower from the southern marsh, a strip of cloth dyed deep red, a color you've never seen before. Children gather close. Adults pretend not to look, but they do. And for a moment, even the elders seem young. You ask where he came from. He shrugs, points in every direction. You ask where he'll go next. He smiles, doesn't answer. That night, he stays in the longhouse, wrapped in a borrowed blanket near the fire. He speaks only a little stories, mostly quiet ones, about frozen rivers and lost keys, about a dog that led him home once when he'd forgotten the way, about a village that traded him a song. You lie near the hearth and listen. His voice is like wind moving through pine. You don't catch every word. You don't need to. You dream of wagons that roll through fog, of roads that bend into forest and never return, of people who carry stories in their pockets, sharing them like coins. The next morning, he's gone. And no sound, no farewell, just wheel tracks in the frost, leading out beyond the fields, and the village feels quiet again, not empty, just settled. People return to work, but something stays behind, the feeling of the wider world brushing gently against your doorstep. You help your father stack firewood and notice the beeswax in your pocket, still warm, still golden, still carrying the scent of someone else's journey. You place it on the shelf beside your sleeping space, not to use, just to remember. Later that week, you visit the neighbor who traded her eggs for a comb made of bone. She brushes her hair slowly as you sit with her. She doesn't speak of the trade, she just smiles, and you both sit in the light for a long while, saying nothing. Trade here is not just goods, it's touch, memory, presence. You learn that value isn't always counted. Sometimes it's carried, sometimes it's a carved stick, a red thread, a story told once by the fire, never repeated. Sometimes it's a smile in the frost, a beeswax candle that hasn't yet been lit, a stranger's boot print that fades slowly in the mud. You fall asleep that night thinking of the road, winding out past the village, past the forest, into a world you don't need to see to believe in. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind them, you follow the cart, one slow, creaking wheel at a time, toward the next firelight, and into sleep. The land is never silent here, even when the village sleeps, even when the fires burn low and the last voice has faded. The earth hums beneath you, not with noise, with rhythm, with breath. You wake early, the chill biting gently at your nose. A thin mist wraps around the rooftops, softening the edges of everything. You step outside wrapped in your thickest cloak, boots crunching over a skin of frost, and turn toward the woods. You don't always need a reason. Sometimes, the forest calls without asking. The path curves beyond the houses, past the grazing fields, and into the trees. You know these trees. You've seen them since you could walk. Oaks, elder, ash, thick-barked and ancient, reaching quietly toward the sky. You brush your hand against their trunks as you pass. The roughness feels familiar, like the back of someone's hand you've held many times. A squirrel darts across your path, vanishing up the trunk before you can blink. You smile to yourself. Nothing here is waiting for you. Everything is just being. You follow the small stream. It trickles quietly over stone and root, the water cold and clear. You kneel beside it and dip your fingers in. It stings for a second, then numbs, a gentle reminder of how alive the world is, even when it looks asleep. The forest opens to a glade you've always loved. Sunlight slips between the branches here. Not much, but enough. You sit on a low stone, breathe slowly, and listen. Birds, a distant woodpecker, the soft pad of something small moving through leaves, and underneath it all, a silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full. The land itself is watching, not with eyes, just presence. You notice mushrooms near the base of a fallen log, pale, round, delicate. You don't touch them. You just look. Above them, a tiny snail inches along a mossy ridge, patient as the sun. Everything here has its own time. You gather a few sticks for kindling, a handful of early herbs, not because you're asked to, but because that's what you do. You give your thanks with your hands, not words. A habit you learned from your grandmother. She always bowed slightly to the trees before leaving. On the way home, the wind shifts. You lift your face toward it, and it carries the scent of pine, of damp earth, of something wild and good. The animals sense it too. The goats are quieter, the hens more still. Even the dog that usually chases shadows is curled near the fence, eyes half-lidded, listening to something you cannot hear. Back at the house, your mother is arranging bundles of dried leaves near the door, not for flavor, but for scent. She crushes one between her fingers and holds it to your nose. "Marjoram," she says. "For clarity." You nod, though clarity feels too big a word for such a small leaf. Still, it lingers in the room like memory. You help your father mend the fence that borders the western edge of the village. It's not damaged, just old. You press your boot into the soft ground, hold a post steady while he drives it deeper. The soil gives, then holds, willing but strong. Later, you walk along the hilltop and look down over the valley. The sky above is full of drifting clouds, slow and soft like wool. In the distance, the river glints between trees, a silver ribbon that cuts through land and memory alike. You think about how long it's been flowing. How many have stood here before you, watching it? You wonder if the land remembers. Some say the stones do, that they keep stories etched in their weight, that every step we take wakes something ancient. You place your hand on a standing rock near the edge of the field. It's taller than you, worn smooth by wind and rain. No markings, no signs, but it feels old, kind. You rest there a while, not to ask questions, just to be still. Evening comes slowly. The light turns gold, then gray, then the first stars peek through the haze. The forest behind you rustles, not loudly, just enough to say, "We're here too." You walk home by the flicker of a lantern, the road familiar beneath your feet. Inside, the fire is warm. The air smells of broth and ash. Someone hums, you're not sure who. Maybe it's your sister. Maybe it's just the sound of comfort. You sit by the hearth and rub your hands together. The dog settles beside you. Your father rests his hand briefly on your shoulder, then moves on. No one speaks much. No one needs to. Outside, the land darkens, but not in fear, just in sleep. You lie down, your body tired but easy. You think again of the forest, of the stream, of the moss beneath your fingertips, of the way the trees don't rush. And as your breath slows and your limbs grow heavy, you feel yourself soften, sink, and settle into the very earth that raised you. Not with fear, not with hurry, just with peace. You sleep, and the land sleeps with you. The bell rings once, not loud, not urgent, just a single chime across the fields, carried on morning wind, drifting through shuttered windows and soft earthen paths. It doesn't command, it reminds. It's the bell from the chapel. You've heard it for as long as you can remember. You don't rush when it rings. No one does. But your body responds anyway. A quiet turning inward, a breath drawn slower, a pause. You pull on your cloak and walk the narrow lane toward the sound. The chapel is small, just stone and wood, moss growing between the cracks. No spires, no gold. A simple place, built by hands like yours. The door stands open. A candle flickers inside. Smoke curls toward the low ceiling beams, carrying the scent of beeswax and old wood. You enter quietly. No one greets you with words, but someone nods. A space is made on the bench. You sit. No one speaks much here. The priest is already present, not robed in grandeur, just a man in plain cloth, hands folded, eyes closed. His voice, when it comes, is barely louder than the wind outside. He speaks not of wrath or fear, but of patience, of seeds that wait all winter before daring to rise, of streams that run underground for years before anyone hears them, of light that travels across the dark just to reach a single open eye. He tells no stories of punishment, only of waiting, of stillness, of things that come when the time is right. There is no sermon, no thunder, just silence, stretched long enough that you begin to feel your own heart more clearly. Someone beside you sighs. Someone near the front begins to hum. It's not a hymn, you know, but the sound is steady, like a lullaby remembered from before birth. You glance at the window. The sun is rising just above the trees now, casting soft beams through the stained panes, not colored glass, just thick, wavy pieces that scatter the light like mist. The altar is bare, save for a single bowl of water and a small carved cross. Its edges are worn from countless fingers. You touch it gently. The wood is smooth, cool. After a while, you rise and step outside. The air feels different, lighter. The wind no longer nips at brushes. You walk slowly back toward the village, past the sheep fields and the low stone wall, where wildflowers grow even in the colder months. Someone waves at you from a doorway. You wave back. There are no words, just the shared mourning, just the presence. You visit the graveyard, not because someone told you to, but because the gate stood open, and your feet turned in. The stones are uneven, some worn smooth, some still bearing names you recognize. You stop beside your grandmother's marker. There's no sadness, only quiet. You whisper something. You're not sure what. Maybe just her name. A bird lands nearby, pecks at the ground once, then flutters away. You smile. On your way back, you pass the healer's garden. Even in the cold, certain herbs persist: rosemary, yarrow, thyme. The smell rises as you brush past them. Your fingers pause over a sprig of lavender, brittle and gray, but still fragrant. Dot in the center of the village. Someone lights a small fire, not for heat, just for gathering. A few children are drawing shapes in the dirt with sticks. A dog sleeps near the kindling. The priest walks by and nods to each of them. He sits, not above, not apart, but with. You join them. The fire crackles softly. Someone brings bread. Someone else, a bowl of warm broth. A third person begins to hum the same melody from the chapel, and slowly, without thinking, you hum along. The day passes gently. The sun shifts across the sky, slow and steady. Shadows stretch, then soften. You help mend a fence. You carry water. You sit with an old woman who simply wants to talk about nothing, and all of it, every motion, every word, every silence feels like a kind of prayer, not in form, but in feeling, reaching upward without lifting your arms, a bowing without bending your knees. As night comes, the bell chimes again. This time not from the chapel, but from the edge of the village, a single bell tied to a tree branch. It rings when the wind is right, or when someone brushes past, or when, maybe, the world wants you to listen. You do. You lie in bed beneath a blanket that smells faintly of herbs and wood smoke, your body heavy, your mind soft. You think of the candlelight, of the priest's slow voice, of the sound of people humming in the same breath, of stones carved with names that haven't been spoken aloud in years, but still matter, and you realize faith here isn't found in words carved in books. It's found in moments. In kindnesses left unspoken. In rhythms followed not out of fear, but out of knowing. You close your eyes. The silence is deep, but not empty. It's full of breath, and fire, and song, and you sleep, knowing you are part of it, held in it, and carried forward on the slow, sacred tide of time. The year has turned again. The frost comes early this time, and with it, a kind of hush, not fearful, not heavy, just quiet, the kind of quiet that settles when the work is done and the world is waiting. You wake slowly to the sound of the wind whispering through the thatch. The coals are barely warm. Your breath clouds gently above you. You roll to your side, cocooned in wool and shadow, and listen to the world rise one breath at a time. Outside, someone is already carrying water. Someone else is stirring a pot. The dog stretches near the doorway, paws twitching in sleep. And somewhere, someone is telling a story. It drifts in through the cold, like the scent of wood smoke. You follow it, not quickly, there's no hurry anymore. Just the slow rhythm of footsteps across hardened earth. You pass the familiar trees, the fences you've mended, the chapel with its door left ajar for light. Near the central fire, the old ones are gathered. They speak slowly, not to be heard but to remember. They talk about the old winters, the deep snows that once buried the carts, the fire that took half a barn, the year when the stars moved strangely in the sky. You've heard some of the stories before. Others shift with each telling, details added, softened, twisted like threads, but the shape of them remains. You sit close, hands tucked into your sleeves, and let the voices wash over you. The speaker's voice is cracked with age, but steady. She speaks not like a teacher, but like a river, gently, inevitably. You learn that legacy isn't always left in stone. Sometimes, it's the way someone stirs soup without measuring, the way they know which herb to use for a cough, the way your father hums before sleep, the way your mother places her palm flat against your back when you're cold. These are the things that last. No one writes them down, but they remain. You spend the morning helping to repair the roof of the granary, not because it's falling, but because it will someday, and someone should remember how it's done. The elder shows you where the straw must be thicker, where the pitch must slope just right. His hands move slowly now, but with purpose. You mirror them. You will remember. At midday, you help the children learn to bind reeds for baskets. Their fingers are too small, their laughter too loud, but the work goes on. You teach not because you are a master, but because someone once taught you. A girl asks you why the reeds must be soaked first. You pause. You're not sure anymore who told you. You only know it's true. You tell her what you know. She nods. Later, she teaches another. The chain continues. There are no schools here, but everything teaches. The land, the fire, the silence, the way people touch and speak and wait. Later, you help the healer prepare a tincture for aching joints. You don't know the recipe, but she lets you watch. Her hands move over the dried leaves with care. She hums softly, something old and tuneless. You ask if she ever forgets what to do. She smiles and says, "Sometimes I forget what I learned, but I remember what I felt." And you understand. Memory in this world is not about facts, it's about presence. A child runs past with a wooden toy, something you helped carve months ago. They've worn the edges smooth with play. It's scratched, a little broken, but still loved, still carried. You watch them go, and it feels like a kind of story being told without words. That night, the wind rises. You sit beside the fire again, listening to your grandfather tell a tale so old he doesn't even claim it anymore. "Wasn't mine to start with," he says, "but it stayed with me." It's about a bird that refused to fly south one winter, about how the forest kept it warm, about how even the smallest creature holds the favor of the world, if it listens. When he finishes, no one speaks. You all just sit there, listening. To the fire. To the wind. To the long memory of things. Later, you lie in bed, eyes open to the dark. You think of your hands, of all they've touched, all they've mended. You wonder what someone else might remember from them, and you realize something simple, something soft. You don't have to be remembered by name, only by feeling. By warmth. By the way your presence shaped the room around you. You close your eyes. The story continues, and so do you, quietly, softly, into sleep. The season begins to shift again. It happens slowly, so softly you almost miss it. A slightly longer stretch of daylight, a patch of earth, once hidden beneath frost, softening beneath your boots. the distant sound of water running faster through the streams. Spring does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives in signs. A new bird call at dawn. A lamb born in the quiet hours of early morning. Buds just beginning to push through last year's branches. You wake with the window open a little wider now. You still wear wool, still stoke the fire, but the cold no longer presses. It lingers, and you feel the change, not in your skin, but in your breath. The villagers begin preparing for planting. The plow is checked, seed sorted, ropes tightened, not with excitement, not yet, with steadiness. You walk to the fields with your father, who stoops to press his fingers into the soil. He says nothing for a while, just stands there, hands buried, eyes closed. Then he nods. It's time. The ground is still heavy, but ready. The kind of ready that comes only after rest. You help turn the earth. The smell rises, rich, dark, alive. You move slowly, letting the rhythm take over. Lift, turn, breathe, repeat. The wind brushes your face. The sun sits lower still, but warmer than the week before. Around you, others work in near silence, not because there's nothing to say, because everything worth saying is already understood. The days grow longer now. Meals are eaten with shutters open. Children play near puddles and call to crows. You repair tools beside the fire with less urgency. You no longer count the logs remaining. You no longer worry over the salt stores. You begin to look ahead again. One evening, the healer places a small green sprout in your hand, something she's coaxed from the warmth of the indoor pot. Peppermint, she says. It likes to grow where it doesn't belong. You smile, press the tiny stem into your own garden plot. You'll check it tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, but already, you know it will take root. You pass the same places as always: the fence, the stream, the chapel door, and notice how each one holds new light now. Moss grows greener, bark feels wetter, the stream sings a little louder, even the stones seem warmer under your palm. And so do your thoughts. You remember the long winter, but not with heaviness. You remember the cart that came with trade, the stories beside the hearth, the frost that painted windows at dawn. You remember shaping iron in the forge. You remember listening to silence in the woods. You remember learning how to listen to people too. You remember the weight of things, and the lightness of letting them pass. One morning, your grandfather takes you to the oldest tree in the wood. Its bark is twisted, its roots stretch wide like fingers into the moss. He places a hand on its trunk and says only, "This tree was here when I was your age." You nod. You don't need more. Essie lives in the things that endure, and sometimes, enduring simply means standing still. Later that day, you help a new child learn to tie rope knots. She stumbles, laughs, tries again. You hold the cord steady, just as someone once held it for you. In that moment, you realize you are now the one passing the knowledge. The story has looped. You walk home under a sky that holds more light than it did last week. A soft rain begins to fall, not cold, not harsh, just enough to settle the dust, to darken the stones, to make everything smell alive. You sleep that night with your window unlatched, and you dream, not of war or kings or burning towers, but of hands and soil, of quiet fires, of paths worn smooth by walking, of old voices telling simple truths, and of yourself, not as a visitor to this time, but as someone who belongs to it, because you do. You were born into the dark ages, and you lived. You learned the seasons. You shaped the world with your hands. You listened. You shared. You rested. And now, as the world softens towards spring, you soften too, with warmth, into breath, into peace, and into sleep.